Hey, hey, it's Ray Langley at your service. How are you all today? Virtual entertainer and wolf girl extraordinaire, welcome to another reading stream of the Maltese Falcon. Welcome in, Candace. It's barely been a little over 12 hours since my last stream. You can't have missed me that much. Sorry I'm starting a little late. Well, I mean, I hit the go live button at the right time, but I just posted it on Twitter as well. I should be posting that on Blue Sky as well, but which I will actually. But I was reading through my old accents book. It's a book that I've had since my time at don't worry about it, and it's basically a book that helps you learn how to do accents from different regions of the world. Now, it's not a shorthand for learning the language, of course, and it doesn't replace being a native speaker, but it does help for stage and theater performances, for learning how to at least give a more authentic voice to certain characters from different regions. If you've been keeping up with my Ace Attorney playthrough, you'll know that I do a lot of voices. all of them by myself, and I try to give the characters different energies, tones, and in some cases, accents. There's a few upcoming characters in future parts of the game that I think deserve a little more effort and having more authentic regional based accents and dialects that would be kind of not done proper justice if I gave them just my standard American accent. Now, that's not to say I'm going to do a good job at it. After all, nobody's perfect. But I want to give it that touch of authenticity, that touch of effort. Accents are fun to play with. They're not always my strong suit, but they're fun. And I think that having that in mind, approaching it with the mindset of putting in the work, will make it overall a better experience for you guys as my listeners. I sound a bit more quiet than usual. I am a little bit low key right now. My voice isn't quite projecting. I'm saving that for when I start the story. Let me just get some water before we start. No, don't be sorry. I know I usually sound a bit more, not quite boisterous, but I do have a bit of a more clear projection normally when I'm talking. I guess for me the reading streams are a bit more cozy and comfortable, so I tend to kind of drop my voice a little bit, be a little bit more laid back. Hi, Fizcatos, welcome in. Yeah, exactly. It's about like giving it that flair, that variety and versatility. It to me makes the world feel more lived in when everybody doesn't sound like they're from California. So, with all these colorful cast of characters, they should have an equally colorful touch to their voices, but that's a topic for a different stream. Right now, we are going to be visiting the Maltese Falcon. Now, where we last left off, because it's been about a week since I last read this, a quick summation is that we're following the character of Sam Spade, a private detective, a noir genre hero, whose partner, Archer, has been murdered, and the mark that they were sent to follow has been slain. The woman who requested their services turns out to not be who she says she is, and other such intrigue and mystery. So, that's gonna be fun. Oh, 1 second. My backing music stopped working on my end, so I had to fix that. Army Productions, good to see you. How are you doing? Welcome in. As well, part of what we touched on last time, there was a man named Joe Cairo who paid our protagonist a visit, and turns out to have enlisted his services for the retrieval of a reported treasure, which seems to be the title of the story. So, we'll do a few more chapters today and see how far we get, and if we get to see this elusive Maltese Falcon. Finals month? Oof. Good luck, my friend. Now, as always, I do give voices to the characters based on vibes and just basically what I feel makes for a good improvisation. None of this is rehearsed basic disclaimer, none of it's rehearsed. I am doing this entirely by the seat of my pants. So if a character's voice changes, or doesn't sound the same as they were last time, the vibe changed. Or I just felt they needed to sound different. In either case, this is all for fun, and I hope you enjoy the performance. The Maltese Falcon was the baddies we rizzed up along the way. Yeah, that's another thing. Like the title of the video implies, there are depictions of women here. The women here are not written great. But it was 1930, so I guess? Anyway, let's get started. Chapter 6, The Undersized Shadow. Let me just adjust my mic real quick. One sec. Oh, yes, the link for the story. You can follow along here. It is on Project Gutenberg. As part of being in the public domain, it is now accessible for anyone to read. So feel free to follow along or just listen in. All right. Chapter 6, The Undersized Shadow. For half an hour after Joe Cairo had gone, Spade sat alone, still and frowning, at his desk. Then he said aloud, in the tone of one dismissing a problem, "Well, they're paying for it," and took a bottle of Manhattan cocktail and a paper drinking cup from a desk drawer. He filled the cup 2/3 full, drank, returned the bottle to the drawer, tossed the cup into the wastebasket, put on his hat and overcoat, turned off the lights, and went down to the night-lit street. An undersized youth of 20 or 21, in neat gray cap and overcoat, was standing idly on the corner, below Spade's building. Spade walked up Sutter Street to Kearny, where he entered a cigar store to buy 2 sacks of Bull Durham. When he came out, the youth was one of 4 people waiting for a streetcar on the opposite corner. Spade ate dinner at Herbert's Grill in Powell Street. When he left the grill at 7:45, the youth was looking into a nearby haberdasher's window. Spade went to the Hotel Belvedere, asking at the desk for Mr. Cairo. He was told that Cairo was not in. The youth sat in a chair in a far corner of the lobby. Spade went to the Geary Theater, failed to see Cairo in the lobby, and posted himself on the curb in front facing the theater. The youth loitered with other loiterers before Marcard's restaurant below. At 10 minutes past 8, Joe Cairo appeared, walking up Geary Street with his little mincing, bobbing steps. Apparently, he did not see Spade until the private detective touched his shoulder. He seemed moderately surprised for a moment, and then said, "Oh, yes, of course you saw the ticket." "Uh-huh. I've got something I want to show you." Spade drew Cairo back towards the curb a little away from the other waiting theatergoers. "The kid in the cap down by Marcard's." Cairo murmured, "Oh, see," and looked at his watch. He looked up Geary Street. He looked at the theater sign in front of him on which George Arliss was shown costumed as Shylock, and then his dark eyes crawled sidewise in their sockets until they were looking at the kid in the cap, at his cool, pale face with curling lashes hiding lowered eyes. "Who is he?" Spade asked. Cairo smiled up at Spade. "I do not know him." "He's been tailing me around town." Cairo wet his lower lip with his tongue and asked, "Do you think it was wise, then, to let him see us together?" "How do I know?" Spade replied. "Anyway, it's done." Cairo removed his hat and smoothed his hair with a gloved hand. He replaced his hat carefully on his head and said with every appearance of candor, "I give you my word I do not know him, Mr. Spade. I give you my word I have nothing to do with him. I have asked nobody's assistance except yours on my word of honor." "Then he's one of the others." "That may be." "I just wanted to know, because if he gets to be a nuisance, I may have to hurt him." "Do as you think best. He's not a friend of mine." "That's good. There goes the curtain. Good night," Spade said, and crossed the street to board a westbound streetcar. The youth in the cap boarded the same car. Spade left the car at Hyde Street and went up to his apartment. His rooms were not greatly upset, but showed unmistakable signs of having been searched. When Spade had washed and had put on a fresh shirt and collar, he went out again, walked up to Sutter Street, and boarded a westbound car. The youth boarded it also. Within half a dozen blocks of the Coronet, Spade left the car and went into the vestibule of a tall brown apartment building. He pressed 3 bell buttons together. The street door lock buzzed. He entered, passed the elevator and stairs, went down a long yellow-walled corridor to the rear of the building, found a back door fastened by a Yale lock, and let himself out into a narrow court. The court led to a dark back street, up which Spade walked for 2 blocks. Then he crossed over to California Street and went to the Coronet. It was not quite 9:30 o'clock. The eagerness with which Bridget O'Shaughnessy welcomed Spade suggested that she had not been entirely certain of his coming. She had put on a satin gown of the blue shade called archoise that season, with chalcedony shoulder straps, and her stockings and slippers were archoise. The red and cream sitting room had been brought to order and livened with flowers in squat pottery vases of black and silver. 3 small rough-barked logs burned in the fireplace. Spade watched them burn, while she put away his hat and coat. "Do you bring me good news?" she asked when she came into the room again. Anxiety looked through her smile, and she held her breath. "We won't have to make anything public that hasn't already been made public." "The police won't have to know about me?" "No." She sighed happily and sat on the walnut settee. Her face relaxed, and her body relaxed. She smiled up at him with admiring eyes. "However did you manage it?" she asked, more in wonder than in curiosity. "Most things in San Francisco can be bought or taken." "And you won't get into trouble? Do sit down." She made room for him on the settee. "I don't mind a reasonable amount of trouble," he said with not too much complacence. He stood beside the fireplace and looked at her with eyes that studied, weighed, judged her without pretense that they were not studying, weighing, judging her. She flushed slightly under the frankness of his scrutiny, but she seemed more sure of herself than before, though a becoming shyness had not left her eyes. He stood there until it seemed plain that he meant to ignore her invitation to sit beside her, and then crossed to the settee. "You aren't," he asked as he sat down, "exactly the sort of person you pretend to be, are you?" "I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure I know what you mean," she said in her hushed voice, looking at him with puzzled eyes. "Schoolgirl manner," he explained, stammering and blushing and all that. She blushed and replied hurriedly, not looking at him. "I told you this afternoon that I've been bad, worse than you could know." "That's what I mean," he said. "You told me that this afternoon in the same words, same tone. It's a speech you've practiced." After a moment in which she seemed confused, almost to the point of tears, she laughed and said, "Very well then, Mr. Spade. I'm not at all the sort of person I pretend to be. I'm 80 years old, incredibly wicked, and an iron molder by trade. But if it's a pose, it's one I've grown into, so you won't expect me to drop it entirely, will you?
Oh, it's all right, he assured her. Only it wouldn't be all right if you were actually that innocent. We'd never get anywhere.
I won't be innocent, she promised with a hand on her heart.
I saw Joe Cairo tonight,
He said, in the manner of one making polite conversation. Gaiety went out of her face. Her eyes, focused on his profile, became frightened, then cautious. He had stretched his legs out and was looking at his crossed feet. His face did not indicate that he was thinking about anything. There was a long pause before she asked, uneasily, You know him?
I saw him tonight.
Spade did not look up, and he maintained his light conversational tone.
He was going to see George Arliss.
You mean you talked to him?
Only for a minute or two, till the curtain bell rang.
She got up from the settee and went to the fireplace to poke the fire. She changed, slightly, the position of an ornament on the mantelpiece, crossed the room to get a box of cigarettes from a table in a corner, straightened the curtain, and returned to her seat. Her face, now, was smooth and unworried. Spade grinned sidewise at her and said,
You're good. You're very good.
Her face did not change. She asked quietly, What did he say?
About what?
She hesitated. About me.
Nothing.
Spade turned to hold his lighter under the end of her cigarette. His eyes were shiny in a wooden Satan's face. Well, what did he say? She asked with half-playful petulance.
He offered me $5,000 for the Blackbird.
She started. Her teeth tore the end of her cigarette, and her eyes, after a swift, alarmed glance at Spade, turned away from him.
You're not going to go poking around at the fire and straightening up the room again, are you? He asked lazily.
She laughed a clear, merry laugh, dropped the mangled cigarette into a tray, and looked at him with clear, merry eyes. I won't, she promised. And what did you say?
$5,000 is a lot of money.
She smiled, but when, instead of smiling, he looked gravely at her, her smile became faint, confused, and presently vanished. In its place came a hurt, bewildered look. Surely you're not really considering it, she said.
Why not? $5,000 is a lot of money.
But Mr. Spade, you promised to help me. Her hands were on his arm. I trusted you. You can't. She broke off, took her hands from his sleeve, and worked them together. Spade smiled gently into her troubled eyes.
Don't let's try to figure out how much you've trusted me,
he said.
I promised to help you, sure. But you didn't say anything about any blackbirds.
But you must have known, or you wouldn't have mentioned it to me. You do know now. You won't, you can't treat me like that. Her eyes were cobalt blue prayers.
$5,000 is,
he said for the third time,
a lot of money.
She lifted her shoulders and hands and let them fall in a gesture that accepted defeat. It is, she agreed in a small, dull voice. It is far more than I could ever offer you, if I must bid for your loyalty. Spade laughed. His laughter was brief and somewhat bitter.
That is good,
he said,
coming from you. What have you given me besides money? Have you given me any of your confidence, any of the truth, any help in helping you? Haven't you tried to buy my loyalty with money and nothing else? Well, if I'm peddling it, why shouldn't I let it go to the highest bidder?
I've given you all the money I have. Tears glistened in her white-ringed eyes. Her voice was hoarse, vibrant. I've thrown myself on your mercy, told you that without your help I'm utterly lost. What else is there? She suddenly moved close to him on the settee and cried angrily, "Can I buy you with my body?" Their faces were a few inches apart. Spade took her face between his hands and he kissed her mouth roughly and contemptuously. Then he sat back and said,
"I'll think it over."
His face was hard and furious. She sat still, holding her numbed face where his hands had left it. He stood up and said,
"Christ, there's no sense to this."
He took 2 steps toward the fireplace and stopped, glowering at the burning logs, grinding his teeth together. She did not move. He turned to face her. The 2 vertical lines above his nose were deep clefts between red whales.
"I don't give a damn about your honesty,"
he told her, trying to make himself speak calmly.
"I don't care what kind of tricks you're up to, what your secrets are, but I've got to have something to show that you know what you're doing."
"I do know. Please believe that I do and that it's all for the best and—"
"Show me,"
he ordered.
"I'm willing to help you. I've done what I could so far. If necessary, I'll go ahead blindfolded, but I can't do it without more confidence in you than I've got now. You've got to convince me that you know what it's all about, that you're not simply fiddling around by guess and, by God, hoping it'll come out all right somehow in the end."
"Can't you trust me just a little longer?"
"How much is a little, and what are you waiting for?"
She bit her lip and looked down. "I must talk to Joe Cairo," she said almost inaudibly.
"You can see him tonight,"
Spade said, looking at his watch.
"His show will be out soon. We can get him on the phone at his hotel."
She raised her eyes, alarmed. "But he can't come here. I can't let him know where I am. I'm afraid."
"My place,"
Spade suggested. She hesitated, working her lips together, then asked, "Do you think he'd go there?" Spade nodded. "All right," she exclaimed, jumping up, her eyes large and bright. "Shall we go now?" She went into the next room. Spade went to the table in the corner and silently pulled the drawer out. The drawer held 2 packs of playing cards, a pad of scorecards for bridge, a brass screw, a piece of red string, and a gold pencil. He had shut the drawer and was lighting a cigarette when she returned wearing a small dark hat and a gray kidskin coat, carrying his hat and coat. Their taxicab drew up behind a dark sedan that stood directly in front of Spade's street door. Iva Archer was alone in the sedan, sitting at the wheel. Spade lifted his hat to her and went indoors with Bridget O'Shaughnessy. In the lobby, he halted beside one of the benches and asked,
"Do you mind waiting here a moment? I won't be long."
"That's perfectly all right," Bridget O'Shaughnessy said, sitting down. "You needn't hurry." Spade went out to the sedan. When he opened the sedan's door, Iva spoke quickly. "I've got to talk to you, Sam. Can't I come in?" Her face was pale and nervous.
"Not now."
Iva clicked her teeth together and asked sharply, "Who is she?"
I've only a minute, Iva," Spade said patiently. "What is it?"
"Who is she?" she repeated, nodding at the street door. He looked away from her down the street. In front of a garage, on the next corner, an undersized youth of 20 or 21 in neat gray cap and overcoat loafed with his back against a wall. Spade frowned and returned his gaze to Iva's insistent face.
"What is the matter?" he asked. "Has anything happened? You oughtn't to be here at this time of night."
"I'm beginning to believe that," she complained. "You told me I oughtn't to come to the office, and now I oughtn't to come here. Do you mean I oughtn't to chase after you? If that's what you mean, why don't you say it right out?"
"Now, Iva, you've got no right to take that attitude."
"I know I haven't. I haven't any rights at all, it seems, where you're concerned. I thought I did. I thought your pretending to love me gave me—"
Spade said wearily, "This is no time to be arguing about that, Precious. What was it you wanted to see me about?"
"I can't talk to you here, Sam. Can't I come in?"
"Not now."
"Why can't I?" Spade said nothing. She made a thin line of her mouth, squirmed around straight behind the wheel, and started the sedan's engine, staring angrily ahead. When the sedan began to move, Spade said, "Good night, Iva." shut the door, and stood at the curb with his hat in his hand until it had been driven away. Then he went indoors again. Bridget O'Shaughnessy rose, smiling cheerfully from the bench, and they went up to his apartment. Let me see chat real quick. You know, I had a video in my recommends where one lady was complaining that most modern romance novels are mostly smut. I suppose she never read this, did she? Reminder that her husband died not long ago. Yeah, like in the book's time, it was like, what, maybe 2 days? 3 days? Okay. Let's continue. Chapter 7. G in the air. In his bedroom that was a living room, now that In his bedroom that was a living room, now the wall bed was up, Spade took Bridget O'Shaughnessy's hat and coat, made her comfortable in a padded rocking chair, and telephoned the Hotel Belvedere. Cairo had not returned from the theater. Spade left his telephone number with the request that Cairo call him as soon as he came in. Spade sat down in the armchair beside the table, and without any preliminary, without an introductory remark of any sort, began to tell the girl about a thing that had happened some years before in the Northwest. He talked in a steady, matter-of-fact voice that was devoid of emphasis or pauses, though now and then he repeated a sentence slightly rearranged, as if it were important that each detail be related exactly as it had happened. At the beginning, Bridget O'Shaughnessy listened with only partial attentiveness, obviously more surprised by his telling the story than interested in it, her curiosity more engaged with his purpose in telling the story than with the story he told. But presently, as the story went on, it caught her more and more fully, and she became still and receptive. A man named Flitcraft had left his real estate office in Tacoma to go to luncheon one day and had never returned. He did not keep an engagement to play golf after 4 that afternoon, though he had taken the initiative in making the engagement less than half an hour before he went out to luncheon. His wife and children never saw him again. His wife and he were supposed to be on the best of terms. He had 2 children, boys, one 5 and the other 3. He owned his house in a Tacoma suburb, a new Packard, and the rest of the appurtenances of successful American living. Flitcraft had inherited $70,000 from his father, and with his success in real estate was worth something in the neighborhood of $200,000 at the time he vanished. His affairs were in order, though there were enough loose ends to indicate that he had not been setting them in order preparatory to vanishing. A deal that would have brought him an attractive profit, for instance, was to have been concluded the day after the one on which he disappeared. There was nothing to suggest that he had more than $50 or $60 in his immediate possession at the time of his going. His habits for months past could be accounted for too thoroughly to justify any suspicion of secret vices, or even of another woman in his life, though either was barely possible.
He went like that,
Spade said,
like a fist when you open your hand.
When he reached this point in the story, the telephone bell rang.
Hello?
Spade said into the instrument.
Mr. Cairo? This is Spade. Can you come up to my place, Post Street, now? Yes, I think it is.
He looked at the girl, pursed his lips, and then said rapidly,
Miss O'Shaughnessy is here and wants to see you.
Bridget O'Shaughnessy frowned and stirred in her chair but did not say anything. Spade put the telephone down and told her,
He'll be up in a few minutes. Well, that was in 1922. In 1927, I was with one of the big detective agencies in Seattle. Mrs. Flitcraft came in and told us somebody had seen a man in Spokane who looked a lot like her husband. I went over there. It was Flitcraft, all right. He had been living in Spokane for a couple of years as Charles, that was his first name, Pierce. He had an automobile business that was netting him 20 or 25,000 a year, a wife, a baby son, owned his home in a Spokane suburb, and usually got away to play golf after 4 in the afternoon during the season.
Spade had not been told very definitely what to do when he found Flitcraft. They talked in Spade's room at the Davenport. Flitcraft had no feeling of guilt. He had left his first family well provided for, and what he had done seemed to him perfectly reasonable. The only thing that bothered him was a doubt that he could make that reasonableness clear to Spade. He had never told anybody his story before, and thus had not had to attempt to make its reasonableness explicit. He tried now.
I got it all right,
Spade told Bridget O'Shaughnessy.
but Mrs. Flitcraft never did. She thought it was silly. Maybe it was. Anyway, it came out all right. She didn't want any scandal, and after the trick he had played on her, the way she looked at it, she didn't want him. So they were divorced on the quiet, and everything was swell all around. Here's what had happened to him. Going to lunch, he passed an office building that was being put up. Just a skeleton. A beam or something fell 8 or 10 stories down and smacked the sidewalk alongside him. It brushed pretty close to him but didn't touch him, though a piece of the sidewalk was chipped off and flew up and hit his cheek. It only took a piece of skin off, but he still had the scar when I saw him. He rubbed it with his finger, well, affectionately, when he told me about it. He was scared stiff, of course, he said, but he was more shocked than really frightened. He felt like somebody had taken the lid off life and let him look at the works.
Flitcraft had been a good citizen and a good husband and father, not by any outer compulsion, but simply because he was a man who was most comfortable in step with his surroundings. He had been raised that way. The people he knew were like that. The life he knew was a clean, orderly, sane, responsible affair. Now a falling beam had shown him that life was fundamentally none of those things. He, the good citizen husband-father, could be wiped out between office and restaurant by the accident of a falling beam. He knew then that men died at haphazard like that and lived only while blind chance spared them. It was not primarily the injustice of it that disturbed him. He accepted that after the first shock. What disturbed him was the discovery that in sensibly ordering his affairs he had got out of step, and not into step, with life. He said he knew before he had gone 20 feet from the fallen beam that he would never know peace again until he had adjusted himself to this new glimpse of life. By the time he had eaten his luncheon, he had found his means of adjustment. Life could be ended for him at random by a falling beam. He would change his life at random by simply going away. He loved his family, he said, as much as he supposed was usual, but he knew he was leaving them adequately provided for, and his love for them was not of the sort that would make absence painful.
He went to Seattle that afternoon,
Spade said,
and from there by boat to San Francisco. For a couple of years he wandered around and then drifted back to the Northwest, and settled in Spokane and got married. His second wife didn't look like the first, but they were more alike than they were different. You know, kind of women that play fair games of golf and bridge and like new salad recipes. He wasn't sorry for what he had done. It seemed reasonable enough to him. I don't think he even knew he had settled back naturally into the same groove he had jumped out of in Tacoma. But that's the part of it I always liked. He adjusted himself to beams falling, and then no more of them fell, and he adjusted himself to them not falling.
How perfectly fascinating, Bridget O'Shaughnessy said. She left her chair and stood in front of him, close. Her eyes were wide and deep. I don't have to tell you how utterly at a disadvantage you'll have me, with him here if you choose. Spade smiled slightly without separating his lips. No,
You don't have to tell me.
he agreed. And you know I'd never have placed myself in this position if I hadn't trusted you already. Her thumb and forefinger twisted a black button on his blue coat. Spade said, "That again," with mock resignation. "But you know it's so," she insisted.
"No, I don't know it."
He patted the hand that was twisting the button.
My asking for reasons why I should trust you brought us here. Don't let's confuse things. You don't have to trust me anyhow, as long as you can persuade me to trust you.
She studied his face. Her nostrils quivered. Spade laughed. He patted her hand again and said,
"Don't worry about that now. He'll be here in a moment. Get your business with him over, and then we'll see how we'll stand."
"And you'll let me go about it with him in my own way?"
"Sure."
She turned her hand under his so that her fingers pressed his. She said softly, "You're a godsend."
Spade said, "Don't overdo it."
She looked reproachfully at him, though smiling, and returned to the padded rocker. Joe Cairo was excited. His dark eyes seemed all irises, and his high-pitched, thin-voiced words were tumbling out before Spade had the door half open. "That boy is out there watching the house, Mr. Spade. That boy you showed me, or to whom you showed me, in front of the theater. What am I to understand from that, Mr. Spade? I came here in good faith, with no thought of tricks or traps."
"You were asked in good faith."
Spade frowned thoughtfully.
"But I ought to have guessed he might have shown up. He saw you come in?"
"Naturally. I could have gone on, but that seemed useless, since you had already let him see us together." Bridget O'Shaughnessy came into the passageway behind Spade and asked anxiously, "What boy? What is it?" Cairo removed his black hat from his head, bowed stiffly, and said in a prim voice, "If you do not know, ask Mr. Spade. I know nothing about it except through him."
"A kid who's been trying to tail me around town all evening."
Spade said carelessly over his shoulder, not turning to face the girl.
"Come on in, Cairo. There's no use standing here talking for all the neighbors."
Bridget O'Shaughnessy grasped Spade's arm above the elbow and demanded, Did he follow you to my apartment?"
"No, I shook him before that. Then I suppose he came back here to try to pick me up again."
Cairo, holding his black hat to his belly with both hands, had come into the passageway. Spade shut the corridor door behind him, and they went into the living room. There, Cairo bowed stiffly over his hat once more and said, "I am delighted to see you again, Miss O'Shaughnessy." "I was sure you would be, Joe," she replied, giving him her hand. He made a formal bow over her and released it quickly. She sat in the padded rocker she had occupied before. Cairo sat in the armchair by the table. Spade, when he had hung Cairo's hat and coat in the closet, sat on an end of the sofa in front of the windows and began to roll a cigarette. Bridget O'Shaughnessy said to Cairo, "Sam told me about your offer for the Falcon. How soon can you have the money ready?" Cairo's eyebrows twitched. He smiled. "It is ready." He continued to smile at the girl for a little while after he had spoken, and then looked at Spade. Spade was lighting his cigarette. His face was tranquil. "In cash?" the girl asked. "Oh, yes," Cairo replied. She frowned, put her tongue between her lips, withdrew it, and asked, "You are ready to give us $5,000 now if we give you the Falcon?" Cairo held up a wriggling hand. "Excuse me," he said. "I expressed myself badly. I did not mean to say that I have the money in my pockets, but that I am prepared to get it on a very few minutes' notice at any time during banking hours. Oh. She looked at Spade. Spade blew cigarette smoke down the front of his vest and said, "That's probably right. He had only a few hundred in his pockets when I frisked him this afternoon." When her eyes opened round and wide, he grinned. The Levantine bent forward in his chair. He failed to keep eagerness from showing in his eyes and voice. "I can be quite prepared to give you the money at, say, 10:30 in the morning, eh?" Bridget O'Shaughnessy smiled at him and said, "But I haven't got the Falcon." Cairo's face was darkened by a flush of annoyance. He put an ugly hand on either arm of his chair, holding his small-boned body erect and stiff between them. His dark eyes were angry. He did not say anything. The girl made a mock placatory face at him. "I'll have it in a week at the most, though," she said. "Where is it?" Cairo used politeness of mien to express skepticism. "Where Floyd had hid it." "Floyd? Thursby?" She nodded. "And you know where that is?" he asked. "I think I do." "Then why must we wait a week?" "Perhaps not a whole week. Whom are you buying it for, Joe?" Cairo raised his eyebrows. "I told Mr. Spade, for its owner." Surprise illuminated the girl's face. "So you went back to him?" "Naturally I did." She laughed softly in her throat and said, "I should have liked to see that." Cairo shrugged. "That was the logical development." He rubbed the back of one hand with the palm of the other. His upper lids came down to shade his eyes. "Why, if I in turn may ask a question, are you willing to sell to me?" "I'm afraid," she said simply, "after what happened to Floyd, that's why I haven't it now. I'm afraid to touch it except to turn it over to somebody else right away." Spade, propped on an elbow on the sofa, looked at it and listened to them impartially. In the comfortable slackness of his body, in the easy stillness of his features, there was no indication of either curiosity or impatience. "Exactly what," Cairo asked in a low voice, "happened to Floyd?" The tip of Bridget O'Shaughnessy's right forefinger traced a swift G in the air. Cairo said, "I see." But there was something doubting in his smile. "Is he here?" "I don't know," she said impatiently. "What difference does it make?" The doubt in Cairo's smile deepened. "It might make a world of difference," he said, and rearranged his hands in his lap so that, intentionally or not, a blunt forefinger pointed at Spade. The girl glanced at the pointed finger and made an impatient motion with her head. "Or me," she said. "Or you." "Exactly. And shall we add more certainty? More certainly the boy outside." "Yes," she agreed, and laughed. "Yes, unless he's the one you had in Constantinople." Sudden blood mottled Cairo's face. In a shrill, enraged voice he cried, "The one you couldn't make!" Bridget O'Shaughnessy jumped up from her chair. Her lower lip was between her teeth. Her eyes were dark and wide in a tense white face. She took 2 quick steps toward Cairo. He started to rise. Her right hand went out and cracked sharply against his cheek, leaving the imprint of fingers there. Cairo grunted and slapped her cheek, staggering her sidewise, bringing from her mouth a brief, muffled scream. Spade, wooden of face, was up from the sofa and close to them by then. He caught Cairo by the throat and shook him. Cairo gurgled and put a hand inside his coat. Spade grasped the Levantines' wrist, wrenched it away from the coat, and forced it straight out to the side, and twisted it until the clumsy, flaccid fingers opened to let the black pistol fall down on the rug. Bridget O'Shaughnessy quickly picked up the pistol. Cairo, speaking with difficulty because of the fingers on his throat, said, "This is the second time you've put your hands on me." His eyes, though the throttling pressure on his throat made them bulge, were cold and menacing.
"Yes," Spade growled, "and when you're slapped, you'll take it and like it."
He released Cairo's wrist and with a thick open hand struck the side of his face 3 times, savagely. Cairo tried to spit in Spade's face, but the dryness of the Levantine's mouth made it only an angry gesture. Spade slapped the mouth, cutting the lower lip. The doorbell rang. Cairo's eyes jerked into focus on the passageway that led to the corridor door. His eyes had become unangry and wary. The girl had gasped and turned to face the passageway. Her face was frightened. Spade stared gloomily for a moment at the blood trickling from Cairo's lip and then stepped back, taking his hand from the Levantine's throat. "Who is it?" the girl whispered, coming close to Spade, and Cairo's eyes jerked back to ask the same question. Spade gave his answer irritably.
"I don't know."
The bell rang again, more insistently.
"Well, keep quiet,"
Spade said, and went out of the room, shutting the door behind him. Spade turned on the light in the passageway and opened the door to the corridor. Lieutenant Dundee and Tom Polhouse were there.
"Hello, Sam," Tom said. "We thought maybe you wouldn't have gone to bed yet."
Dundee nodded but said nothing. Spade said good-naturedly,
"Hello? You guys pick swell hours to do your visiting in. What is it this time?"
Dundee spoke then, quietly.
"We want to talk to you, Spade." "Well?"
Spade stood in the doorway, blocking it.
"Go ahead and talk."
Tom Polhouse advanced, saying,
"We don't have to do it standing here, do we?"
Spade stood in the doorway and said,
"You can't come in."
His tone was very slightly apologetic. Tom's thick-featured face, even in height with Spade's, took on an expression of friendly scorn, though there was a bright gleam in his small, shrewd eyes.
"What the hell, Sam?"
he protested and put a big hand playfully on Spade's chest. Spade leaned against the pushing hand, grinned wolfishly, and asked,
"Gonna strong-arm me, Tom?"
Tom grumbled,
"Oh, for God's sake,"
and took his hand away. Dundee clicked his teeth together and said through them,
"Let us in."
Spade's lip twitched over his eye tooth. He said,
"You're not coming in. What do you want to do about it? Try to get in or do your talking here? Or go to hell?"
Tom groaned. Dundee, still speaking through his teeth, said,
"It'd pay you to play along with us a little, Spade. You've got away with this and you've got away with that, but you can't keep it up forever. Stop me when you can."
Spade replied arrogantly.
"That's what I'll do."
Dundee put his hands behind him and thrust his face hard up against the private detective's.
"There's talk going around that you and Archer's wife were cheating on him."
Spade laughed.
"It sounds like something you thought up yourself." "Then there's not anything to it." "Not anything." "The talk is," Dundee said, "that she tried to get a divorce out of him so she could put in with you, but he wouldn't give it to her. Anything to that?"
"No."
"There's even talk," Dundee went on stolidly, "that's why he was put on the spot."
Spade seemed mildly amused.
"Don't be a hog," he said. "You oughtn't try to pin more than one murder at a time on me. Your first idea that I knocked Thursby off because he killed Miles falls apart if you blame me for killing Miles, too." "You haven't heard me say you killed anybody," Dundee replied. "You're the one that keeps bringing that up. But suppose I did. You could have blipped them both. There's a way of figuring it." "Uh-huh. I could have butchered Miles to get his wife, and then Thursby so I could hang Miles' killing on him. That's a hell of a swell system. Or will be when I can give somebody else the bump and hang Thursbys on them. How long am I supposed to keep that up? Are you gonna put your hand on my shoulder for all the killings in San Francisco from now on?
Tom said,
"Oh, cut the comedy, Sam. You know damn well we don't like this any more than you do, but we got our work to do."
I hope you've got something to do besides pop in here early every morning with a lot of damn fool questions.
And get damn lying answers,
Dundee added deliberately.
Take it easy, Spade cautioned him.
Dundee looked him up and down and then looked him straight in the eyes.
"If you say there was nothing between you and Archer's wife," he said, "you're a liar, and I'm telling you so."
A startled look came into Tom's small eyes. Spade moistened his lips with the tip of his tongue and asked,
"Is that the hot tip that brought you here at this ungodly time of night?"
"That's one of them."
"And the others?"
Dundee pulled down the corners of his mouth.
"Let us in."
He nodded significantly at the doorway in which Spade stood. Spade frowned and shook his head. Dundee's mouth corners lifted in a smile of grim satisfaction.
"There must have been something to it,"
he told Tom. Tom shifted his feet and, not looking at either man, mumbled, "God knows."
"What's this?"
Spade asked.
"Charades?"
"All right, Spade. We're going."
Dundee buttoned his overcoat.
"We'll be in to see you now and then. Maybe you're right in bucking us. Think it over."
"Uh-huh,"
Spade said, grinning.
"Glad to see you anytime, Lieutenant, and whenever I'm not busy, I'll let you in."
A voice in Spade's living room screamed, "Help! Help! Police! Help!" The voice, high and thin and shrill, was Joe Cairo's. Lieutenant Dundee stopped turning away from the door, confronted Spade again, and said decisively,
"I guess we're going in."
The sounds of a brief struggle, of a blow, of a subdued cry came to them. Spade's face twisted into a smile that held little joy. He said,
"I guess you are,"
and stood out of the way. When the police detectives had entered, he shut the corridor door and followed them back to the living room. Imagine getting the police on your ass because your partner's wife wants you so bad. What level of NTR is this? Let me get some water real quick. I will be right back. Okay, and we're back. Let's see. Chapter 8 Horse Feathers. Bridget O'Shaughnessy was huddled in the armchair by the table. Her forearms were up over her cheeks, her knees drawn up until they hid the lower part of her face. Her eyes were white-circled and terrified. Joe Cairo stood in front of her, bending over her, holding in one hand the pistol Spade had twisted out of his hand. His other hand was clapped to his forehead. Blood ran through the fingers of that hand and down under them to his eyes. A smaller trickle from his cut lip made 3 wavy lines across his chin. Cairo did not heed the detectives. He was glaring at the girl huddled in front of him. His lips were working spasmodically, but no coherent sound came from between them. Dundee, the first of the 3 into the living room, moved swiftly to Cairo's side, put a hand on his own hip under his overcoat, a hand at the Levantines' wrist, and growled,
"What are you up to here?"
Cairo took the red-smeared hand from his head and flourished it close to the lieutenant's face. Uncovered by the hand, his forehead showed a 3-inch ragged tear.
"This is what she has done!" he cried. "Look at it!"
The girl put her feet down on the floor and looked warily from Dundee, holding Cairo's wrist, to Tom Polehouse, standing a little behind them, to Spade, leaning against the doorframe. Spade's face was placid. When his gaze met hers, his yellow-gray eyes glinted for an instant with malicious humor, and then became expressionless again.
"Did you do that?"
Dundee asked the girl, nodding at Cairo's cut head. She looked at Spade again. He did not in any way respond to the appeal in her eyes. He leaned against the doorframe and observed the occupants of the room with the polite, detached air of a disinterested spectator. The girl turned her eyes up to Dundee's. Her eyes were wide and dark and earnest. "I had to," she said in a low, throbbing voice. "I was all alone in here with him when he attacked me. I tried to keep him off. I couldn't make myself shoot him."
"Oh, you liar!"
Cairo cried, trying unsuccessfully to pull the arm that held his pistol out of Dundee's grip.
"Oh, you dirty, filthy liar!"
He twisted himself around to face Dundee.
"She's lying awfully. I came here in good faith and was attacked by both of them, and when you came, he went out to talk to you, leaving her here with this pistol. And then she said they were going to kill me after you left, and I called for help, so you wouldn't leave me here to be murdered, and then she struck me with the pistol."
"Here, give me the thing," Dundee said, and took the pistol from Cairo's hand. "Now let's get this straight. What'd you come here for?"
"He sent for me."
Cairo twisted his head around to stare defiantly at Spade.
"He called me up on the phone and asked me to come here."
Spade blinked sleepily at the Levantine and said nothing. Dundee asked,
"What'd he want you for?"
Cairo withheld his reply until he had mopped his bloody forehead and chin with a lavender-barred silk handkerchief. By then, some of the indignation in his manner had been replaced by caution.
"He said they wanted to see me. I didn't know what about."
Tom Polehouse lowered his head, sniffed the odor of Kuiper that the mopping handkerchief had released into the air, and turned his head to scowl interrogatively at Spade. Spade winked at him and went on rolling a cigarette. Dundee asked,
"Well, what happened then?"
"Then they attacked me. She struck me first, and then he choked me and took the pistol out of my pocket. I don't know what they would have done next if you hadn't arrived at that moment. I dare say they would have murdered me then and there. When he went out to answer the bell, he left her here with the pistol to watch over me."
Bridget O'Shaughnessy jumped out of the armchair, crying,
"Why don't you make him tell the truth?"
and slapped Cairo on the cheek. Cairo yelled inarticulately. Dundee pushed the girl back into the chair with the hand that was not holding the Levantine's arm and growled,
"None of that now."
Spade, lighting his cigarette, grinned softly through smoke and told Tom,
"She's impulsive."
"Yeah," Tom agreed. Dundee scowled down at the girl and asked,
"What do you want us to think the truth is?"
"Not what he said," she replied. "Not anything he said."
She turned to Spade.
"Is it?"
How do I know? Spade responded. I was out in the kitchen mixing an omelet when it all happened, wasn't I?
She wrinkled her forehead, studying him with eyes that perplexity clouded. Tom grunted in disgust. Dundee, still scowling at the girl, ignored Spade's speech and asked her,
If he's not telling the truth, how come he did the squawking for help and not you?
"Oh, he was frightened to death when I struck him," she replied, looking contemptuously at the Levantine. Cairo's face flushed where it was not blood-smeared. He exclaimed, "Phew! Another lie!" She kicked his leg, the high heel of her blue slipper striking him just below the knee. Dundee pulled him away from her while Big Tom came to stand close to her, rumbling, "Behave, sister. That's no way to act." "Then make him tell the truth," she said defiantly.
We'll do that all right, he promised. Just don't get rough.
Dundee, looking at Spade with green eyes, hard and bright and satisfied, addressed his subordinate.
Well, Tom, I don't guess we'll go wrong pulling the lot of them in.
Tom nodded gloomily. Spade left the door and advanced to the center of the room, dropping his cigarette into a tray on the table as he passed it. His smile and manner were amiably composed.
Don't be in a hurry, he said. Everything can be explained. I bet you, Dundee agreed, sneering.
Spade bowed to the girl.
Miss O'Shaughnessy, he said, may I present Lieutenant Dundee and Detective Sergeant Polehouse?
He bowed to Dundee.
Miss O'Shaughnessy is an operative in my employ.
Joe Cairo said indignantly, "That isn't so. She—" Spade interrupted him in a quite loud but still genial voice.
I hired her just recently, yesterday. This is Mr. Joe Cairo, a friend, an acquaintance, at any rate, of Thursby's. He came to me this afternoon and tried to hire me to find something Thursby was supposed to have on him when he was bumped off. It looked funny the way he put it to me, so I wouldn't touch it. Then he pulled a gun. Well, never mind that, unless it comes to a point of laying charges against each other. Anyway, after talking it over with Miss O'Shaughnessy, I thought maybe I could get something out of him about Miles's and Thursby's killings, so I asked him to come up here. Maybe we put the questions to him a little rough, but he wasn't hurt any, not enough to have to cry for help. I'd already had to take his gun away from him again.
As Spade talked, anxiety came into Cairo's reddened face. His eyes moved jerkily up and down, shifting their focus uneasily between the floor and Spade's bland face. Dundee confronted Cairo and brusquely demanded,
Well, what have you got to say to that?
Cairo had nothing to say for nearly a minute while he stared at the lieutenant's chest. When he lifted his eyes, they were shy and wary. "I don't know what I should say," he murmured. His embarrassment seemed genuine.
Try telling the facts, Dundee suggested.
"The facts?" Cairo's eyes fidgeted, though their gaze did not actually leave the lieutenant's. "What assurance have I that the facts will be believed?"
Quit stalling. All you've got to do is swear to a complaint that they took a poke at you, and the warrant clerk will believe you enough to issue a warrant that'll let us throw them in the can.
Spade spoke in an amused tone.
Go ahead, Cairo. Make him happy. Tell him you'll do it, and then we'll swear to one against you, and he'll have the lot of us.
Cairo cleared his throat and looked nervously around the room, not into the eyes of anyone there. Dundee blew breath through his nose in a puff that was not quite a snort and said,
Get your hats.
Cairo's eyes, holding worry and a question, met Spade's mocking gaze. Spade winked at him and sat on the arm of the padded rocker.
Well, boys and girls,
he said, grinning at the Levantine and at the girl with nothing but delight in his voice and grin.
We put it over nicely.
Dundee's hard, square face darkened the least of shades. He repeated, peremptorily,
Get your hats.
Spade turned his grin on the lieutenant, squirmed into a more comfortable position on the chair arm, and asked lazily, Don't you know when you're being kidded? Tom Polhouse's face became red and shiny. Dundee's face, still darkening, was immobile except for lips moving stiffly to say,
No, but we'll let that wait till we get down to the hall.
Spade rose and put his hands in his trouser pockets. He stood erect so he might look that much farther down at the lieutenant.
His grin was a taunt, and self-certainty spoke in every line of his posture.
I dare you to take us in, Dundee,
He said.
We'll laugh at you in every newspaper in San Francisco. You don't think any of us is gonna swear to any complaints against the others, do you? Wake up. You've been kidded. When the bell rang, I said to Miss O'Shaughnessy and Cairo, it's those damn bulls again. They're getting to be a nuisance. Let's play a joke on them. When you hear them going, one of you scream, and then we'll see how far we can string them along before they tumble. And
Bridget O'Shaughnessy bent forward in her chair and began to laugh hysterically. Cairo started and smiled. There was no vitality in his smile, but he held it fixed on his face. Tom, glowering, grumbled, "Cut it out, Sam." Spade chuckled and said,
but that's the way it was. And the cut on his head and mouth?
Dundee asked scornfully.
Where'd they come from?
Ask him, Spade suggested.
Maybe he cut himself shaving.
Cairo spoke quickly before he could be questioned, and the muscles of his face quivered under the strain of holding his smile in place while he spoke. I fell. We intended to be struggling for the pistol when you came in, but I fell. I tripped on the end of the rug and fell while we were pretending to struggle. Dundee said.
Horse feathers.
Spade said.
That's all right, Dundee. Believe it or not. The point is that that's our story, and we'll stick to it. The newspapers will print it whether they believe it or not, and it'll be just as funny one way or the other, or more so. What are you gonna do about it? It's no crime to kid a copper, is it? You haven't got anything on anybody here. Everything we told you was part of the joke. What are you gonna do about it?
Dundee put his back to Spade and gripped Cairo by the shoulders.
You can't get away with that, he snarled, shaking the Levantine. You belched for help and you've gotta take it.
No, sir, Cairo sputtered. It was a joke. He said you were friends of his and would understand. Spade laughed. Dundee pulled Cairo roughly around, holding him now by one wrist and the nape of his neck.
I'll take you along for packing the gun anyway, he said, and I'll take the rest of you along to see who laughs at the joke.
Cairo's alarmed eyes jerked sidewise to focus on Spade's face.
Spade said, Don't be a sap, Dundee. The gun was part of the plant. It's one of mine.
He laughed.
Too bad it's only a .32, or maybe you could find it was the one Thursby and Miles were shot with.
Dundee released Cairo, spun on his heel, and his right fist clicked on Spade's chin. Bridget O'Shaughnessy uttered a short cry. Spade's smile flickered out at the instant of the impact, but returned immediately with a dreamy quality added. He steadied himself with a short backward step, and his thick sloping shoulders writhed under his coat. Before his fist could come up, Tom Polhouse had pushed himself between the two men, facing Spade, encumbering Spade's arms with the closeness of his barrel-like belly and his own arms. No, for Christ's sake! Tom begged. After a long moment of motionlessness, Spade's muscles relaxed.
Then get him out of here quick,
he said. His smile had gone away again, leaving his face sullen and somewhat pale. Tom, staying close to Spade, keeping his arms on Spade's arms, turned his head to look over his shoulder at Lieutenant Dundee. Tom's small eyes were reproachful. Dundee's fists were clenched in front of his body and his feet were planted firm and a little apart on the floor, but the truculence in his face was modified by thin rims of white showing between green irises and upper eyelids.
Get their names and addresses, he ordered.
Tom looked at Cairo, who said quickly, Joe Cairo, Hotel Belvedere. Spade spoke before Tom could question the girl.
You can always get in touch with Miss O'Shaughnessy through me.
Tom looked at Dundee. Dundee growled,
Get her address.
Spade said,
Her address is in care of my office.
Dundee took a step forward, halting in front of the girl.
Where do you live?
He asked. Spade addressed Tom.
Get him out of here. I've had enough of this.
Tom looked at Spade's eyes, hard and glittering, and mumbled,
Take it easy, Sam.
He buttoned his coat and turned to Dundee, asking in a voice that aped casualness, Well, is that all? And taking a step towards the door, Dundee's scowl failed to conceal indecision. Cairo moved suddenly towards the door, saying,
I'm going too, if Mr. Spade will be kind enough to give me my hat and coat. Spade asked,
What's the hurry?
Dundee said angrily,
It was all in fun, but just the same, you're afraid to be left here with them.
Not at all, the Levantine replied, fidgeting, looking at neither of them. But it's quite late, and I'm going. I'll go out with you, if you don't mind. Dundee put his lips together firmly and said nothing. A light was glinting in his green eyes. Spade went to the closet in the passageway and fetched Cairo's hat and coat. Spade's face was blank. His voice held the same blankness when he stepped back from helping the Levantine into his coat and said to Tom,
Tell him to leave the gun.
Dundee took Cairo's pistol from his overcoat pocket and put it on the table. He went out first with Cairo at his heels. Tom halted in front of Spade, muttering,
I hope to God you know what you're doing.
Got no response, sighed, and followed the others out. Spade went after them as far as the bend in the passageway, where he stood until Tom had closed the corridor door. Chapter 9. Bridget. Spade returned to the living room and sat on an end of the sofa, elbows on knees, cheeks in hands, looking at the floor and not at Bridget O'Shaughnessy, smiling weakly at him from the armchair. His eyes were sultry. The creases between brows over his nose were deep. His nostrils moved in and out with his breathing. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, when it became apparent that he was not going to look up at her, stopped smiling and regarded him with growing uneasiness. Red rage came suddenly into his face, and he began to talk in a harsh, guttural voice. Holding his maddened face in his hands, glaring at the floor, he cursed Dundee for 5 minutes without break, cursed him obscenely, blasphemously, repetitiously in a harsh, guttural voice. Then he took his face out of his hands, looked at the girl, grinned sheepishly, and said,
Childish, huh? I know, but by God, I do hate being hit without hitting back.
He touched his chin with careful fingers.
Not that it was so much of a sock at that.
He laughed and lounged back on the sofa, crossing his legs.
A cheap enough price to pay for winning.
His brows came together in a fleeting scowl.
Though I'll remember it.
The girl, smiling again, left her chair and sat on the sofa beside him. You're absolutely the wildest person I've ever known, she said. Do you always carry on so high-handed?
I let him hit me, didn't I?
Oh, yes, but a police official.
It wasn't that, Spade explained. It was that in losing his head and slugging me, he overplayed his hand. If I'd have mixed it with him, then he couldn't have backed down. He'd have had to go through with it, and we'd have had to tell that goofy story at headquarters.
He stared thoughtfully at the girl and asked,
What did you do to Cairo?
Nothing. Her face became flushed. I tried to frighten him into keeping still until they had gone, and he either got too frightened or stubborn and yelled.
And then you smacked him with the gun.
I had to. He attacked me.
You don't know what you're doing.
Spade's smile did not hide his annoyance.
It's just what I told you. You're fumbling along by guess and by God.
I'm sorry, she said, her face and voice soft with contrition. Sam.
Sure you are.
He took tobacco and papers from his pockets and began to make a cigarette.
Now you've had your talk with Cairo. Now you can talk to me.
She put a fingertip to her mouth, staring across the room at nothing with widened eyes, and then with narrower eyes glanced quickly at Spade. He was engrossed in the making of the cigarette. Oh, yes, she began. Of course. She took the finger away from her mouth and smoothed her blue dress over her knees. She frowned at her knees. Spade licked his cigarette, sealed it, and asked,
Well?
While he felt for his lighter. But I didn't, she said, pausing between words as if she was selecting them with great care. Have time to finish talking to him.
She stopped frowning at her knees and looked at Spade with clear, candid eyes.
We were interrupted almost before we had begun.
Spade lighted his cigarette and laughed, his mouth empty of smoke.
Want me to phone him and ask him to come back?
She shook her head, not smiling. Her eyes moved back and forth between her lids, and as she shook her head, maintaining her focus on Spade's eyes. Her eyes were inquisitive. Spade put an arm across her back, cupping his hand over the smooth, bare, white shoulder farthest from him. She leaned back into the bend of his arm. He said,
Well, I'm listening.
She twisted her head around to smile up at him with playful insolence, asking, Do you need your arm there for that?
No.
He removed his hand from her shoulder and let his arm drop down behind her. You're altogether unpredictable, she murmured. He nodded and said amiably,
I'm still listening.
Look at the time, she exclaimed, wriggling a finger at the alarm clock perched atop the book saying 2:50 with its clumsily shaped hands.
Uh-huh, it's been a busy evening.
I must go. She rose from the sofa. This is terrible. Spade did not rise. He shook his head and said,
Not until you've told me about it.
But look at the time, she protested, and it would take hours to tell you.
It'll have to take them then.
Am I a prisoner? She asked gaily.
Besides, there's the kid outside. Maybe he hasn't gone home to sleep yet.
Her gaiety vanished. Do you think he's still there?
It's likely.
She shivered. Could you find out?
I could go down and see.
Oh, Will you? Spade studied her anxious face for a moment and then got up from the sofa saying,
Sure.
He got a hat and overcoat from the closet.
I'll be gone about 10 minutes.
Do be careful, she begged as she followed him to the corridor door.
He said, I will,
and went out. Post Street was empty when Spade issued into it. He walked east a block, crossed the street, walked west 2 blocks on the other side, recrossed it, and returned to his building without having seen anyone except 2 mechanics working on a car in a garage. When he opened his apartment door, Bridget O'Shaughnessy was standing at the bend in the passageway, holding Cairo's pistol straight down at her side.
He's still there,
Spade said. She bit the inside of her lip and turned slowly, going back into the living room. Spade followed her in, put his hat and overcoat on a chair, said,
So we'll have time to talk,
and went into the kitchen. He had put the coffee pot on the stove when she came to the door, and was slicing a slender loaf of French bread. She stood in the doorway and watched him with preoccupied eyes. The fingers of her left hand idly caressed the body and barrel of the pistol that her right hand still held.
The tablecloth's in there,
he said, pointing the bread knife at a cupboard that was one breakfast nook partition. She set the table while he spread liverwurst on, or put cold corned beef between, the small ovals of bread he had sliced. Then he poured the coffee, added brandy to it from a squat bottle, and they sat at the table. They sat side by side on one of the benches. She put the pistol down on the end of the bench nearer her.
You can start now, between bites,
he said. She made a face at him, complained, You're the most insistent person, and bit a sandwich.
Yes, and wild and unpredictable. What's this bird, this Falcon, that everyone's all steamed up about?
She chewed the beef and bread in her mouth, swallowed it, looked attentively at the small crescent its removal had made in the sandwich's rim, and asked, Suppose I wouldn't tell you? Suppose I wouldn't tell you anything at all about it? What would you do?
You mean about the bird?
I mean about the whole thing.
I wouldn't be too surprised,
he told her, grinning so that the edges of his jaw teeth were visible.
To know what to do next.
And that would be? She transferred her attention from the sandwich to his face. That's what I wanted to know. What would you do next? He shook his head. Mockery rippled in a smile on her face. Something wild and unpredictable?
Maybe. But I don't see what you've got to gain by covering up now. It's coming out bit by bit anyhow. There's a lot of it I don't know, but there's some of it I do, and some more that I can guess at. And give me another day like this, I'll soon be knowing things about it that you don't know.
I suppose you do now, she said, looking at her sandwich again, her face serious. But I'm so tired of it, and I do so hate having to talk about it. Wouldn't it be just as well to wait and let you learn about it as you say you will?
Spade laughed. I don't know. You'll have to figure that out for yourself. My way of learning is to have heave a wild and unpredictable monkey wrench into the machinery. It's all right with me if you're sure none of the flying pieces will hurt you.
She moved her bare shoulders uneasily but said nothing. For several minutes they ate in silence, he phlegmatically, she thoughtfully. Then she said in a hushed voice, I'm afraid of you, and that's the truth.
He said, That's not the truth.
It is, she insisted in the same low voice. I know 2 men I'm afraid of, and I've seen both of them tonight.
I can understand your being afraid of Cairo,
Spade said.
He's out of your reach.
And you aren't?
Not that way,
he said and grinned. She blushed. She picked up a slice of bread encrusted with gray liverwurst. She put it down on her plate. She wrinkled her white forehead and said, It's a black figure, as you know, smooth and shiny, of a bird, a hawk or falcon, about that high. She held her hands a foot apart.
What makes it important?
She sipped coffee and brandy before she shook her head. I don't know, she said. They'd never tell me. They promised me £500 if I helped them get it. Then Floyd said afterward, after we'd left Joe, that he'd give me $750.
So it must be worth more than $7,500.
Oh, much more than that, she said. They didn't pretend that they were sharing equally with me. They were simply hiring me to help them.
To help them how?
She lifted her cup to her lips again. Spade, not moving the domineering stare of his yellow-gray eyes from her face, began to make a cigarette. Behind them, the percolator bubbled on the stove. To help them get it from the man who had it, she said slowly when she had lowered her cup. A Russian named Kemedov.
How?
Oh, but that's not important, she objected, and wouldn't help you, she smiled impudently, and is certainly none of your business.
This was in Constantinople.
She hesitated, nodded, and said, Marmura. He waved his cigarette at her, saying,
Go ahead, what happened then?
But that's all I've told you. They promised me £500 to help them, and I did. And then we found out that Joe Cairo meant to desert us, taking the Falcon with him and leaving us nothing. So we did exactly that to him first. But then I wasn't any better off than I had been before. Because Floyd hadn't any intention at all of paying me the £750 he had promised me. I had learned that by the time we got here. He said he would go to New York, where he would sell it and give me my share. But I could see he wasn't telling me the truth. Indignation had darkened her eyes to violet. And that's why I came to you, to get you to help me learn where the Falcon was.
And suppose you got it, what then?
Then I'd have been in a position to talk terms with Mr. Floyd Thursby. Spade squinted at her and suggested,
But you wouldn't have known where to take it to get more money than he'd give you, the larger sum that you knew he expected to sell it for.
I did not know, she said. Spade scowled at the ashes he had dumped on his plate.
What makes it worth all that money?
He demanded.
You must have some ideas, at least be able to guess.
I haven't the slightest idea. He directed the scowl at her.
What's it made of?
Porcelain or black stone, I don't know. I've never touched it. I've only seen it once for a few minutes. Floyd showed it to me when we first got hold of it. Spade mashed the end of his cigarette in his plate and made one draught of the coffee and brandy in his cup. His scowl had gone away. He wiped his lips with his napkin, dropped it crumpled on the table, and spoke casually.
You are a liar.
She got up and stood at the end of the table, looking down at him with dark, abashed eyes and a pinkening face. "I am a liar," she said. "I've always been a liar."
Don't brag about it. It's childish.
His voice was good-humored. He came out from between table and bench.
Was there any truth at all in that yarn?
She hung her head. Dampness glistened on her dark lashes. "Some," she whispered.
How much?
Not very much." Spade put a hand under her chin and lifted her head. He laughed into her wet eyes and said,
We've got all night before us. I'll put some more brandy and some more coffee, and we'll try again.
Her eyelids drooped. "Oh, I'm so tired," she said tremulously. "So tired of it all. Of myself, of lying and thinking up lies, and of not knowing what is a lie and what is the truth. I wish I—" She put her hands up to Spade's cheeks, put her open mouth hard against his mouth, her body flat against his body. Spade's arms went around her, holding her to him, muscles bulging in his blue sleeves, a hand cradling her head, its fingers half lost among red hair, a hand moving groping fingers over her slim back. His eyes burned yellowly. That's the end of the chapter. I'm gonna take a break from that real quick, because that was... Oh god, what was that? What was that last paragraph? uh. You do not understand how hard it was to keep a straight face and read that naturally without cracking up mid-sentence. I had to just go into actor mode and be like, no, I am in fact reading this. I am narrating this. Oh god. Okay. I'm sorry, that was just written so painfully, like... What was it you said last week, Candace? This is porn for straight women. Okay. We have one more chapter for today. Let's just... Okay. Let's do this last chapter for today. And some of y'all suggested I read fan fiction at some point. I'm gonna die laughing if I do that. Mostly that like laughter of like, oh god, I'm reading this out loud to people. What do I do? Anyway. Chapter 10. The Belvedere Divan. Beginning day had reduced night to a thin smokiness when Spade sat up. At his side, Bridget O'Shaughnessy's soft breathing had the regularity of utter sleep. Spade was quiet, leaving bed and bedroom and shutting the bedroom door. He dressed in the bathroom. Then he examined the sleeping girl's clothes, took a flat brass key from the pocket of her coat, and went out. He went to the coronet, letting himself into the building and into her apartment with the key. To the eye there was nothing furtive about his going in. He entered boldly and directly. To the ear his going in was almost unnoticeable. He made as little sound as might be. In the girl's apartment he switched on all the lights. He searched the place from wall to wall. His eyes and thick fingers moved without apparent haste, and without ever lingering or fumbling or going back, from 1 inch of their fields to the next, probing, scrutinizing, testing with expert certainty. Every drawer, cupboard, cubbyhole, box, bag, trunk, locked or unlocked, was opened, and its contents subjected to examination by eyes and fingers. Every piece of clothing was tested by hands that felt for telltale bulges, and ears that listened for the crinkle of paper between pressing fingers. He stripped the bed of bedclothes. He looked under rugs and at the underside of each piece of furniture. He pulled down blinds to see that nothing had been rolled up in them for concealment. He leaned through windows to see that nothing hung below them on the outside. He poked with a fork into powder and cream jars on the dressing table. He held atomizers and bottles up against the light. He examined dishes and pans and food containers. He emptied the garbage can on spreadsheets of newspaper. He opened the top of the flush box in the bathroom, drained the box, and peered down into it. He examined and tested the metal screens over the drains of bathtub, wash bowl, sink, and laundry tub. He did not find the black bird. He found nothing that seemed to have any connection with a black bird. The only piece of writing he found was a week-old receipt for the month's apartment rent Bridget O'Shaughnessy had paid. The only thing he found that interested him enough to delay his search while he looked at it was a double handful of rather fine jewelry in a polychrome box in a locked dressing table drawer. When he had finished, he made and drank a cup of coffee. Then he unlocked the kitchen window, scarred the edge of its lock a little with its pocket knife, opened the window over a fire escape, got his hat and overcoat from the settee in the living room, and left the apartment as he had come. On his way home, he stopped at a store that was being opened by a puffy-eyed, shivering, plump grocer and bought oranges, eggs, rolls, butter, and cream. Spade went quietly into his apartment, but before he had shut the corridor door behind him, Bridget O'Shaughnessy cried, "Who is that?"
Young Spade bearing breakfast.
"Oh, you frightened me." The bedroom door he had shut was open. The girl sat on the side of the bed, trembling with her right hand, out of sight under a pillow. Spade put his packages on the kitchen table and went into the bedroom. He sat on the bed beside the table, kissed her smooth shoulder, and said,
"I wanted to see if that kid was still on the job and to get stuff for breakfast."
"Is he?"
"No."
She sighed and leaned against him. "I awakened and you weren't here, and then I heard someone coming in. I was terrified." Spade combed her red hair back from her face with his fingers and said,
"I'm sorry, Angel. I thought you'd sleep through it. Did you have that gun under your pillow all night?"
"No, you know I didn't. I jumped up and got it when I was frightened." He cooked breakfast and slipped the flat brass key into her coat pocket again while she bathed and dressed. She came out of the bathroom, whistling on Cuba. "Shall I make the bed?" she asked.
"That'd be swell. The eggs need a couple minutes more."
Their breakfast was on the table when she returned to the kitchen. They sat where they had sat the night before and ate heartily.
"How about the bird?"
Spade suggested presently as they ate. She put her fork down and looked at him. She drew her eyebrows together and made her mouth small and tight. You can't ask me to talk about that this morning of all mornings, she protested. I don't want to and I won't.
It's a stubborn damn tussy, he said sadly and put a piece of roll into his mouth.
The youth who had shadowed Spade was not in sight when Spade and Bridget O'Shaughnessy crossed the sidewalk to the waiting taxicab. The taxicab was not followed. Neither the youth nor another loiterer was visible in the vicinity of the coronet when the taxicab arrived there. Bridget O'Shaughnessy would not let Spade go in with her. It's bad enough to be coming home in evening dress at this hour without bringing company. I hope I don't meet anybody.
Dinner tonight?
Yes. They kissed. She went into the coronet. He told the chauffeur,
Hotel Belvedere.
When he reached the Belvedere, he saw the youth who had shadowed him sitting in the lobby on a divan from which the elevators could be seen. Apparently, the youth was reading a newspaper. At the desk, Spade learned that Cairo was not in. He frowned and pinched his lower lip. Points of yellow light began to dance in his eyes.
Thanks,
he said softly to the clerk and turned away. Sauntering, he crossed the lobby to the divan from which the elevators could be seen and sat down beside, not more than a foot from, the young man who was apparently reading a newspaper. The young man did not look up from his newspaper. Seen at this scant distance, he seemed certainly less than 20 years old. His features were small, in keeping with his stature, and regular. His skin was very fair. The whiteness of his cheeks was as little blurred by any considerable growth of beard as by the glow of blood. His clothing was neither new nor of more than ordinary quality, but it, and his manner of wearing it, was marked by a hard, masculine neatness. Spade asked casually,
Where is he?
While shaking tobacco down into a brown paper curved to catch it. The boy lowered his paper and looked around, moving with a purposeful sort of slowness, as of a more natural swiftness restrained. He looked with small hazel eyes under somewhat long curling lashes at Spade's chest. He said in a voice as colorless and composed and cold as his young face,
What? Where is he?
Spade was busy with his cigarette.
Who? The fairy.
The hazel eyes' gaze went up Spade's chest to the knot of his maroon tie and rested there.
What do you think you're doing, Jack?
The boy demanded. Kidding me?
I'll tell you when I am.
Spade licked his cigarette and smiled amiably at the boy.
New York, aren't you?
The boy stared at Spade's tie and did not speak. Spade nodded as if the boy had said yes, and asked,
Bombs rush?
The boy stared at Spade's tie for a moment longer, then raised his newspaper and returned his attention to it. Shove off, he said from the side of his mouth. Spade lighted his cigarette, leaned back comfortably on the divan, and spoke with good-natured carelessness.
You'll have to talk to me before you're through, Sonny. Some of you will. And you can tell G. I said so.
The boy put his paper down quickly and faced Spade, staring at his necktie with bleak hazel eyes. The boy's small hands were spread flat over his belly.
Keep asking for it and you're gonna get it, he said. Plenty.
His voice was low and flat and menacing. I told you to shove off. Shove off! Spade waited until a bespectacled, pudgy man and thin-legged blonde girl had passed out of hearing. Then he chuckled and said,
That would go over big back on 7th Avenue. But you're not in Romeville now. You're in my burg.
He inhaled cigarette smoke and blew it out in a long, pale cloud.
Well, where is he?
The boy spoke 2 words. The first, a short guttural verb. The second, you.
People lose teeth talking like that.
Spade's voice was still amiable, though his face had become wooden.
If you want to hang around, you'll be polite.
The boy repeated his 2 words. Spade dropped his cigarette into a tall stone jar beside the divan and with a lifted hand caught the attention of a man who had been standing at an end of the cigar stand for several minutes. The man nodded and came towards them. He was a middle-aged man of medium height, round and sallow of face, compactly built, tidily dressed in dark clothes. "Hello, Sam," he said as he came up. "Hello, Luke." They shook hands, and Luke said, "Say, that's too bad about Miles." "Uh-huh, a bad break." Spade jerked his head to indicate the boy on the divan beside him. "What do you let these cheap gunmen hang out in your lobby for with their tools bulging their clothes?" "Yes?" Luke examined the boy with crafty brown eyes set in a suddenly hard face. "What do you want here?" he asked. The boy stood up. Spade stood up. The boy looked at the 2 men, at their neckties, from one to the other. Luke's necktie was black. The boy looked like a schoolboy standing in front of them. Luke said, "Well, if you don't want anything, beat it and don't come back." The boy said, "I won't forget you guys," and walked out. They watched him go out. Spade took off his hat and wiped his damp forehead with a handkerchief. The hotel detective asked, "What is it?" "Damned if I know," Spade replied. "I just happened to spot him. Know anything about Joe Cairo 635? "Oh, that one," the hotel detective leered. "How long's he been here?" "4 days. This is the 5th. "What about him?" "Search me, Sam. I got nothing against him but his looks." "Find out if he came in last night." "Try to." The hotel detective promised and went away. Spade sat on the divan until he returned. "No," Luke reported. "He didn't sleep in his room. What is it?" "Nothing." "Come clean. You know I'll keep my clams shut. But if there's anything wrong, we ought to know about it so as we can collect our bill." "Nothing like that," Spade assured him. "As a matter of fact, I'm doing a little work for him. I'd tell you if he was wrong." "You'd better. Want me to keep an eye on him?" "Thanks, Luke. It wouldn't hurt. Can't know too much about the men you're working for these days." It was 21 minutes past 11 by the clock over the elevator doors when Joe Cairo came in from the street. His forehead was bandaged. His clothes had the limp unfreshness of too many hours' consecutive wear. His face was pasty, with sagging mouth and eyelids. Spade met him in front of the desk. "Good morning," Spade said easily. Cairo drew his tired body up straight, and the drooping lines of his face tightened. "Good morning," he responded without enthusiasm. There was a pause. Spade said, "Let's go someplace where we can talk." Cairo raised his chin. "Please excuse me," he said. "Our conversations in private have not been such that I am anxious to continue them. Pardon my speaking bluntly, but it is the truth." "You mean last night?" Spade made an impatient gesture with head and hands. "What in hell else could I do? I thought you'd see that. If you pick a fight with her, or let her pick one with you, I've got to throw in with her. I don't know where that damn bird is. You don't. She does. How in hell are we going to get it if I don't play along with her?" Cairo hesitated, said dubiously, "You have always, I must say, a smooth explanation ready." Spade scowled. "What do you want me to do? Learn to stutter? Well, we can talk over here." He led the way to the divan. When they were seated, he asked, "Dundee take you down to the hall?" "Yes." "How long did they work on you?" "Until a very little while ago, and very much against my will." Pain and indignation were mixed in Cairo's face and voice. "I shall certainly take the matter up with the Consulate General of Greece and with an attorney." "Go ahead, see what it gets you. Where'd you let the police shake out of you?" There was prim satisfaction in Cairo's smile. "Not a single thing. I'd adhere to the course that you indicated earlier in your rooms." His smile went away. "Though I certainly wish you had devised a more reasonable story. I felt decidedly ridiculous repeating it." Spade grinned mockingly. "Sure," he said, "but its goofiness is what makes it good. You sure you didn't give them anything?" "You may rely upon it, Mr. Spade, I did not." Spade drummed with his fingers on the leather seat between them.
You'll be hearing from Dundee again. Stay dummied up on him and you'll be alright. Don't worry about the story's goofiness. A sensible one would have had us all in the cooler.
He rose to his feet.
You'll want sleep if you've been standing up under a police storm all night. See you later.
Effie Perrin was saying, "No, not yet," into the telephone when Spade entered his outer office. She looked around at him and her lips shaped a silent word. Iva. He shook his head. "Yes, I'll have him call you as soon as he comes in," she said aloud and replaced the receiver on its prong. "That's the third time she's called up this morning," she told Spade. He made an impatient growling noise. The girl moved her brown eyes to indicate the inner office. "Your Miss O'Shaughnessy's in there. She's been waiting since a few minutes after 9. Spade nodded as if he had expected that and asked, "What else?" "Sergeant Polehouse called up. He didn't leave any message."
Get him for me.
"And G called up?"
Spade's eyes brightened. He asked, Who?
"G. That's what he said." Her air of personal indifference to the subject was flawless. "When I told him you weren't in, he said, 'When he comes in, will you please tell him that G, who got his message, phoned and will phone again?'" Spade worked his lips together as if tasting something he liked.
Thanks, darling,
he said.
See if you can get Tom Polehouse.
He opened the inner door and went into his private office, pulling the door to behind him. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, dressed as on her first visit to the office, rose from a chair beside his desk and came quickly towards him. "Somebody has been in my apartment," she explained. "It is all upside down, every which way." He seemed moderately surprised.
Anything taken?
"I don't think so. I don't know. I was afraid to stay. I changed as fast as I could and came down here. Oh, you must have let that boy follow you there." Spade shook his head.
No, Angel.
He took an early copy of an afternoon paper from his pocket, opened it, and showed her a quarter column headed, "Scream Roots Burglar." A young woman named Carolyn Beale, who lived alone in a Sutter Street apartment, had been awakened at 4 that morning by the sound of somebody moving in her bedroom. She had screamed. The mover had run away. 2 other women who lived alone in the same building had discovered later in the morning signs of the burglars having visited their apartments. Nothing had been taken from any of the 3.
That's where I shook him.
Spade explained.
I went into that building and ducked out the back door. That's why all 3 were women who lived alone. He tried the apartments that had women's names in the vestibule register, hunting for you under an alias.
"But he was watching your place when we were there," she objected. Spade shrugged.
There's no reason to think he's working alone. Or maybe he went to Sutter Street after he had begun to think you were going to stay all night at my place. There are a lot of maybes, but I didn't lead him to the coronet.
She was not satisfied. "But he found it, or somebody did."
Sure.
He frowned at her feet.
I wonder if it could have been Cairo. He wasn't at his hotel all night, didn't get in till a few minutes ago. He told me he had been standing up under a police grilling all night. I wonder.
He turned, opened the door, and asked Effie Perrin,
Got Tom yet?
"He's not in. I'll try again in a few minutes."
Thanks.
Spade shut the door and faced Bridget O'Shaughnessy. She looked at him with cloudy eyes. "You went to see Joe this morning?" she asked.
Yes.
She hesitated. "Why?"
Why?
He smiled down at her.
Because, my own true love, I've got to keep in some sort of touch with all the loose ends of this dizzy affair if I'm ever going to make heads or tails of it.
He put an arm around her shoulders and led her over to his swivel chair. He kissed the tip of her nose lightly and set her down in the chair. He sat on the desk in front of her. He said,
Now we've got to find a new home for you, haven't we?
She nodded with emphasis. "I won't go back there." He patted the desk beside his thighs and made a thoughtful face.
I think I've got it.
He said presently.
Wait a minute.
He went into the outer office, shutting the door. Effie Perrin reached for the telephone, saying, "I'll try again."
Afterwards, does your women's intuition still tell you that she's a Madonna or something?
She looked sharply up at him. I still believe that no matter what kind of trouble she's gotten into, she's all right, if that's what you mean.
That's what I mean, he said. Are you strong enough for her to give her a lift?
How?
Could you put her up for a few days?
You mean at home?
Yeah, her joint's been broken into. That's the second burglary she's had this week. It'd be better for her if she wasn't alone. It would help a lot if you could take her in.
Effie Perrin leaned forward, asking earnestly, Is she really in danger, Sam?
I think she is.
She scratched her lip with a fingernail. That would scare Ma into a green hemorrhage. I'll have to tell her she's a surprise witness or something that you're keeping undercover till the last minute.
You're a darling, Spade said. Better take her out there now. I'll get her key from her and bring whatever she needs over from her apartment. Let's see. You oughtn't to be seen leaving here together. You go home now. Take a taxi, but make sure you're not followed. You probably won't be, but make sure. I'll send her out in a little while, making sure she isn't followed.
And that's the end of chapter 10, which brings us halfway through the book's chapters, halfway through the story. Whew. A lot happened there, huh? They're all lovey-dovey now. Well, I guess that's what happens when you have a fade to black moment together. What do you guys think of the story so far? Personally, I'm still having fun reading it, but it is increasingly becoming very obvious to me that most parodies of the noir genre are specifically parodying this book. But we're halfway through now, and I gotta admit, it's fun enough to read, and I am at least invested enough to keep it going and to keep reading and find out exactly what the hell this bird's about and why it's such a important thing, what makes it so valuable, because so far it just seems to be, you know, bird. Bird statue. It's weird. So bad it's fun. Yeah. Let's see. We'll do more of this next week. We'll do the third installment. 5 more chapters as usual. I think we're gonna go and do this. Let's see, what days do I, what are my days looking like? Currently, it's looking like I can do this maybe the same day or a day earlier. We'll see. Figure that out. I'll have my schedule up for you guys at the usual time, Sunday. Figure out, nail down my timetable, and I'll be able to tell you guys. But
Next week it'll still happen. We're gonna do more Ace Attorney. We're gonna do more Maltese Falcon. I know, maybe I should do something else, add something else to the rotation. So we'll figure everything out. Because I don't want to bore you guys. I know that you guys are having fun, and I know that you guys are enjoying the performances. But I also don't want this to become like a boring routine. I want to do something to like maybe spice things up a little bit for you guys. I think, if anything, I may add an additional stream. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna work things out with my timetable. I'm gonna work things out with my manager, try to hash out some ideas, and then you'll see what we come up with on the schedule. So that's gonna be. I didn't expect to be invested enough, but it's fun to tag along. No, I'm not gonna read. No! What the hell? Why do you want that so much? First of all, if you want me to read that, you're gonna have to find something, send it to me so I can vet it, and then then we'll think about maybe, I don't know. That's not entirely off the table, but I don't know why it's even on the table in the first place. No, I didn't say spicy it up. I said, oh god, no. Besides, I don't think that's something people would tune in for. That's not exactly. I can just see the video title now. Make sure you listen to this with the lights off or something. I don't know. Jeez. Listen. The most I can promise you, Candace, is to do an interest check and see if my audience would even want that in the first place. Because I don't know how many Rainiacs and Langsters out there are like... Sure, you guys are here to listen to me read, but I don't think y'all are here for audiobook erotica, as it were. That seems like a recipe for disaster. It's just the lyrics from the Misery music video. But anyway, at least one Ace Attorney stream and at least one Maltese Falcon stream. There may be 2 Ace Attorney streams because, again, I am having the time of my life revisiting that. If I do another stream, we'll figure out what it is. I kind of miss playing, other games, like fighting games and stuff. So maybe that, or maybe I'll do that stream idea I mentioned of kind of working on a new intro outro song with you guys. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But in any case, I will have the schedule out for you by Sunday. I'm gonna spend today and tomorrow hashing out the ideas, and yeah. I think tomorrow I might also go out and well, Yeah, I think I'll just say it. But I think tomorrow, if time permits, I might even go out to Little Tokyo, in downtown Los Angeles, and get some of those Hololive EN Justice specialty collaboration cream puffs at Beard Papa's. Um, because that's going on right now over here in the States. So, I might do, I don't know, probably not like a stream review of those, but like maybe I'll do like a sort of, I'll talk about it on stream or, post about it on my socials. So look out for that because I'm actually kind of excited to try those. um, I'm really looking forward to trying out all of them, but especially Liz's because that's my Kamiyoshi right there. So yeah. Beside that, yeah, yeah. I'm just at this point. I'm just rambling out loud because I don't want to actually hit the sign off yet. I like hanging out with you guys. But I gotta go eat lunch. I gotta do some stuff. Uh, but I don't want to. Anyway, um, I'm also getting ideas for another future karaoke stream. I won't exactly say what it is yet. I think when we get closer to 100 subs, I'll possibly give you guys an idea of what I want to do. Um, there's so many stream ideas I have, but a lot of them is mostly fitting it time wise, stuff like that. Keeping certain things for certain parts of the year, milestones, and all that. But anyway, um, I don't, I don't want to go. All right, all right. I'll let you guys go. It's been a lot of fun, though. Thank you so much, Rainiacs and Langsters, for hanging out again. Thank you so much for listening to me read more of this silly story. And I will see you guys next week. Again, be on the lookout for my schedule. I'll post it on my Twitter, on my Blue Sky, on my YouTube posts. I will be able to let you guys know what's going on by Sunday. But definitely expect a good amount of streams next week. Feels nice to be back in like a more regular action. So I'm very excited to get more stuff going for you guys. But until then, make sure to eat well, stay hydrated, and get lots of good rest. Be kind to yourselves and be excellent to everyone. And have a radiant rest of your day. And of course, as always, remember to unshrimp yourselves. Take care, everyone. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.